Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating presentation deck today.
Yeah, it's definitely a provocative one.
It really is. It's called the Movin AI revolution. And right at the center of this source is a massive, a highly provocative claim that you and I, all of us, are currently sitting in the middle of the biggest wealth transfer in human history.
Right, which is a huge statement.
Massive. So our mission today is to unpack that. We're going to look at the historical patterns of technological disruption, explore exactly why leading experts are calling artificial intelligence the last revolution humanity is ever going to experience, and then look closely at how a platform called Movin is attempting to give everyday people and businesses a structural advantage in this trillion-dollar economy.
It is an incredibly bold premise to start with, but what makes this material so compelling is that it grounds that claim in a very clear historical context. I mean, before we even touch on artificial intelligence, the deck maps out the cadence of major economic shifts over the last several decades.
Yeah, decade by decade.
Exactly. You see the agricultural focus of the 1960s, the oil and energy booms of the 70s, the banking and finance expansion in the 80s, and then
the 90s hits.
Right, the explosion of property, healthcare, and automobiles in the 90s.
And as you move into the 21st century, the compression of time between these major shifts becomes the real story, I think.
Yeah.
Because the 2000s were completely defined by the web and the birth of e-commerce. Then the 2010s aggressively pivoted to mobile tech, telecom, pharma.
Which leads right into the 2020s, bringing us electric vehicles, semiconductors, and crypto.
Right. And all of that momentum is pointing directly at the target of the 2030s, which this presentation firmly states is the era of artificial intelligence.
And that timeline is crucial. It really sets up the central thesis of the entire presentation. Because when you look at those massive wealth transfers from the dot-com boom to the mobile revolution, you really have to ask, who actually comes out on top?
Usually you'd think it's the people with the most money.
That's the intuitive answer. Capital or intellect. But the historical data from the source suggests something entirely different. Capital advantage doesn't guarantee victory, largely due to incumbent inertia.
Big ships turn slowly.
Exactly. Massive companies are often just too slow to adapt, and raw intelligence alone doesn't predict success either.
The actual deciding factor, according to the deck, is timing. The winners are simply the earliest. They're the ones who recognize the pattern of a structural shift before it becomes, mainstream consensus. The deck actually uses a great phrase for this. It says, "Fortune favors the prepared mind, opportunity favors the bold."
I love that quote.
But recognizing a pattern is one thing, right? Timing it correctly is another. If you look at that timeline, being early to the dot-com boom also meant a lot of people lost their shirts.
Oh, absolutely.
So how does this analysis justify the risk of jumping into AI right now?
Well, that is the crucial distinction between a speculative bubble and a foundational infrastructure shift. The deck addresses this by highlighting the unprecedented velocity of the AI rollout. Unlike the transition from, say, banking to the internet, which took a whole generation to fully integrate, this current revolution is moving 10 times faster.
10
And it's staggering. The infrastructure is being adopted at a pace we have literally never seen. And more importantly, the architects of this technology are speaking about it with a terrifying level of finality.
That finality really jumps out in the material. They pull in quotes from Sam Altman calling AI the last invention humanity ever needs to make.
Right.
And then Ren Zhengfei, the founder of Huawei, echoes that exact sentiment. He states that artificial intelligence may be the final major technological revolution in human history.
When the people actively building the architecture of tomorrow are telling you that this is the final frontier, it completely alters your risk calculus. If this truly is the last major economic revolution, then being earliest isn't just a competitive advantage anymore.
It's survival.
It becomes an absolute necessity for survival. A closing window of opportunity means that waiting to see how things shake out is actually the riskiest position you could possibly take.
Which perfectly explains the sheer volume of capital being deployed right now. The presentation lists the major tech titans, and every single one of them is betting the farm on this.
Oh, without question.
You've got Google pushing Gemini, Microsoft has fully integrated Copilot, Alibaba is heavily invested in Qwen AI, Tencent is developing Yuanbao, and Meta is rolling out Meta AI across all its platforms. You just don't see that kind of uniform alignment across fierce competitors unless the underlying shift is completely undeniable.
Uniform alignment at that scale validates the thesis. When trillion-dollar market caps are all pivoting their primary resources toward the exact same target, they're signaling that AI is no longer an experimental feature. It is the new base layer of the global economy.
But the detail that really illustrates the magnitude of this pivot involves Elon Musk.
Yes, the Grok AI detail.
Exactly. The presentation points out that Musk, in developing Grok AI, reportedly halted physical car production to focus entirely on artificial intelligence infrastructure.
Think about the opportunity cost of that decision for a second. Tesla is synonymous with electric vehicles. According to the deck's own timeline, EVs were a defining revolution of the 2020s.
Right, a massive wealth transfer in itself.
Exactly. So for a company to intentionally disrupt the production of a highly successful physical manufacturing asset, to prioritize a digital AI model that signals a profound shift in perceived value, it tells the broader market that the future upside of AI so vastly outperforms the present value of traditional manufacturing that it is worth absorbing billions in short-term physical losses just to maintain a head start in the digital space.
It's a staggering real-world example of acting boldly. But this brings us to a significant friction point in the material, and it directly involves you, the listener. It's easy to analyze what Google or Elon Musk are doing with their billions, but the deck highlights a massive disconnect for the everyday internet user.
We are totally disconnected from it.
Completely. Our daily digital habits, searching for information, shopping online, sharing content, these actions are the very things generating the data that trains these massive AI models. We are doing the heavy lifting.
Yet, everyday users are entirely disconnected from the financial upside of that activity. We are the raw material for the trillion-dollar economy, but we are positioned solely as consumers of the revolution, not participants in the wealth transfer. We generate the value, but we don't capture the income.
And it isn't just individuals watching from the sidelines. The situation is even more complex for business owners. The presentation breaks down the 4 most critical overhead tracks businesses face today.
What, the real pain points?
Yeah. Content creation teams are incredibly expensive to maintain. Administrative staff drain resources. Sales teams require constant reinvestment to perform. And customer service is just a relentless, never-ending cost center.
Those 4 areas, content, administration, sales, and service, represent the core operational friction of scaling any enterprise. Human capital is expensive, it's volatile, and it's difficult to manage. Most business owners are acutely aware that artificial intelligence can solve these scaling issues. They see the tech titans using it to automate vast swaths of their operations.
But they don't know how to do it themselves.
Exactly. The barrier isn't awareness. The barrier is implementation. The recurring question the deck poses is simply, how? How does a mid-sized merchant or an ambitious entrepreneur actually integrate this technology without needing to hire a team of dedicated machine learning engineers?
That implementation gap is exactly where the presentation introduces Movin. And the material is very careful to define Movin not just as another app or a plugin, but as a complete AI-powered business ecosystem.
We really need to pause on that distinction, because the difference between an AI tool and an AI ecosystem is the core advantage being discussed here. A tool is highly fragmented.
Like using one thing for writing and another for images.
Exactly. You might subscribe to one AI platform to generate your marketing copy, a totally different AI to analyze your sales data, and a third disconnected chatbot for your website. The problem is that none of these systems communicate with each other. You end up creating more administrative work just trying to manage the fragmented tech stack.
Right, which totally defeats the purpose of automation in the first place. An ecosystem, by contrast, implies deep, cohesive integration. The deck breaks this advantage down into specific functional pillars.
Starting with the infrastructure.
Yes, Pillar 1 is their tech development approach. Movin is offering an infrastructure where the AI components are designed from the ground up to work together seamlessly.
By providing a unified infrastructure, they are essentially removing the technical barrier to entry. They are taking the structural advantage that a company like Google or Microsoft enjoys, having all their data and processing power under one cohesive roof and packaging it for the independent business owner.
Yeah.
You don't have to build the bridge. You just have to drive across it.
That unified approach feeds directly into Pillar 2, their e-commerce evolution, which is perhaps the most fascinating part of this ecosystem to me. The source details an AI-powered online selling platform that autonomously learns from every single transaction that takes place.
To really understand the economic power of that, contrast it with a traditional static e-commerce website. A traditional site requires constant human intervention. You have to analyze bounce rates, run manual A/B tests on your pricing, adjust conversion funnels based on historical data. It is reactionary and highly labor-intensive.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. An AI ecosystem that learns autonomously is entirely different. It functions as a dynamic conversion engine. If a customer abandons a cart, the system doesn't just log a data point. It can instantly analyze the friction point, dynamically adjust the follow-up copy, or refine the user interface in real time. It gets smarter and theoretically more profitable with every single interaction, without requiring a human being to pull the levers.
Which naturally leads to how this ecosystem handles the human element, specifically what the deck labels Pillar 3, the ultimate employee. Movin deploys an autonomous customer service layer that provides 247 support. The exact phrasing used in the presentation is that this system never sleeps, never complains, and never quits.
Returning to the business owner's nightmare, we discussed that customer service never ends. This is the structural solution. Human customer service is notoriously unstable. People get tired, they get frustrated by difficult interactions, and turnover rates in those departments are incredibly high.
Burnout is huge.
Massive. By deploying a system that never sleeps or quits, you are stabilizing the most volatile part of your daily operations. You guarantee a consistent, high-level interaction for every single customer, regardless of the time of day or the volume of inquiries.
So if we look at this, we have reduced the cost of content creation, streamlined administration, automated the sales funnels, and stabilized customer service. The obvious question is, what is the end goal of all this efficiency? The presentation makes a highly sophisticated point here.
The reinvestment strategy.
Exactly. The purpose of these AI efficiencies isn't just to boost short-term profit margins. The strategy is that every cent saved through automation frees up capital to be aggressively reinvested into what they call world-class excellence.
That is a profound perspective on resource reallocation. Cost cutting is so often viewed defensively, just as a way to pad today's bottom line. But in a hyper-competitive market, if your competitor is burning 50% of their revenue on basic administrative overhead and customer service, and you are using an AI ecosystem to reduce those same costs to 5%, you have effectively unlocked 45% more capital.
And you don't just pocket that.
No, you pour it into superior product development, aggressive market expansion, and creating an absolutely frictionless customer experience. Over a surprisingly short period of time, that reinvestment cycle creates an insurmountable competitive advantage.
It's the difference between playing to survive and playing to dominate the board. And that philosophy transitions us directly into Act 4, the broader vision outlined in the presentation. Movin's overarching mission is explicitly stated as empowering the world to sell anything, anywhere, at any time, automatically, through their AI engine.
Notice the deliberate use of the word democratizing throughout this section of the text. The sheer scale of that mission empowering the world indicates that this ecosystem isn't built exclusively for enterprise-level corporations. The target audience includes small merchants, solo entrepreneurs, and local businesses.
The everyday person.
Right. The goal is to take the exact same mechanical advantages used by the tech billionaires to generate massive wealth and place them directly into the hands of the everyday merchant.
And the deck outlines how they intend to achieve this democratization through 5 core values. Instead of just listing corporate buzzwords, these values actually seem designed to dismantle the specific fears people have about the AI wealth transfer. For instance, their first value is innovation first, which is defined as creating trends rather than following them.
Which perfectly anchors back to the historical lesson from the beginning of the presentation. The winners of previous wealth transfers were the earliest. They anticipated the shift. If a business platform is merely following existing trends, it is already too late. Innovation first is a requirement for capturing the earliest advantage.
Then there is the second value, the philosophy of community growth, which is built on the idea that when one person wins, everybody wins.
In the context of an AI ecosystem, that isn't just a nice sentiment, it is a literal description of network effects. Traditional business models are often zero-sum. If I win the customer, you lose them. But in a shared AI infrastructure, every time a merchant successfully interacts with a customer, that data trains the underlying model to be more intuitive. Therefore, the success of one user directly enhances the predictive power and efficiency of the tool for every other user on the platform. The community's growth mathematically improves the ecosystem.
That shifts the dynamic entirely. Another foundational premise here, value number 3, is accessibility, ensuring that this level of processing power isn't gated off for the elite.
This directly addresses the deep-seated anxiety surrounding the concept of a wealth transfer. The prevailing fear is that AI will simply consolidate existing wealth, making the rich astronomically richer while displacing the working class. By anchoring their ecosystem in accessibility, the platform is attempting to build a bridge over that exact chasm. It allows everyday people to participate in the wealth generation rather than just being collateral damage of the automation.
And they back up that accessibility with value number 4, being intensely results-driven. Measuring success not by how flashy the tech is, but by real impact, real income, and tangible growth for the user. Finally, value 5 is empowerment, operating on the belief that every person possesses the fundamental capacity to succeed if given the right leverage.
When you look at those 5 principles collectively, you see a highly intentional strategy. People feel alienated from the AI revolution because the barrier to entry seems impenetrable. It feels too complex, too expensive, and frankly too intimidating. The entire architecture of the Movin ecosystem appears designed to systematically eliminate those barriers, transforming the complex infrastructure of artificial intelligence into an accessible utility for the average person.
It really is a compelling roadmap for navigating a very chaotic economic moment. So, looking at the entire scope of this presentation, the narrative is crystal clear. The AI revolution isn't a future event on the horizon. It is an active, rapidly accelerating reality. The historical precedent proves that raw intelligence and massive capital are secondary to timing.
Being early is everything.
Being early is the definitive metric for success. Platforms like Movin are explicitly trying to democratize the immense financial leverage of artificial intelligence, allowing everyday businesses to automate their friction points, radically reallocate their resources, and actually compete in a trillion-dollar arena.
The underlying message of the material is that the rules of economic gravity are being rewritten in real time. The largest wealth transfer in history isn't just a prediction, it is an active process. And the presentation forces a critical evaluation of where you currently stand in relation to that shift.
Which is exactly the challenge we want to leave you with today. Take a hard look at your own daily digital routines. Think about the searches you run, the online purchases you make, the content you share with your network. Are you merely generating the raw data that fuels the tech giants while you watch from the sidelines? Or are you actively seeking out leverage, perhaps the types of automated ecosystems detailed in this presentation, to ensure you are a participant in this massive economic pivot?
It is the defining question of this decade. And building on the absolute finality of the quotes we discussed earlier, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. If the architects of this technology are right, if artificial intelligence truly is the last major invention humanity will ever need to build, and if cohesive ecosystems eventually take over the heavy lifting of our sales, our customer service, and our daily operational friction, what happens next?
That's the real unknown.
In a perfectly automated, highly efficient world, what will become the new defining human skill? When the machines handle the execution flawlessly, what is the unique, irreplaceable value that will set you apart?
That and a profound question to chew on as we watch this all unfold. Thank you so much for joining us for today's deep dive into the Movin AI Revolution presentation. We hope it provided you with some serious clarity and actionable insights into the shift happening around us. Keep questioning the patterns, and we will catch you next time.